Well, thank you for the invitation today. I'm happy to join you. I am a 1989 UW graduate, School of Psychology. I normally am not the person from Child Haven that comes out and talks. My typical day, you would find me in a classroom with 3 to 5-year-olds. So my goal today is not to break out into nursery rhyme and not have you sing along with me, because that would be kind of embarrassing. But I really want to talk about what we do and what I've done for the last 27 years. I think part of what is being offered is talking about a certain population. The certain population I'm going to be talking about are abused and neglected children. How many people have heard of Child Haven? Okay, that's typical, about 5 people in the audience. How many people are from Seattle? All right, about half. How many people have heard of the ACEs study?
Could you turn up your mic?
Actually, that's... Go ahead and keep talking.
Okay, how many people have heard of the ACEs study? Nobody. Nobody in the School of Dentistry has heard of the ACEs study. Very interesting. The adverse childhood experience? Okay. I thought at least half. Okay, we have. Okay. And how many people know the term executive functioning? Kind of the way we're in control of our own bodies, our ability to control ourselves during all times of the day. Okay, these are a couple topics that I'll hit on during this talk. I brought some numbers with me today. If I could have assistance with the slides. These numbers are from the Washington State report on child abuse and neglect. This is for 2011. The numbers are almost the same. They haven't produced them yet for the year 15-16, but they're almost the same for last year and the year before. In Washington State, estimation of about 1.5 million kids. That's total population of kids in Washington. Birth to 18, Child Protective Services received 77,882 calls for abuse and neglect. So somebody had a suspicion or a concern of abuse and neglect, they dialed Child Protective Services and they made a call. Of those calls, almost half were screened in for investigation. There's a whole matrix that CPS follows. If the score rises high enough, then it comes to an investigator who has to go out within 72 hours and investigate what the call is about. For birth to 18, the number of children where it was so severe after it was investigated that the children needed to be placed out of home was almost 10,000 in Washington State. It's a big number. Want that mic? Okay. The other number is the number under that. This is where I come in. Birth to 5. Of all of the total calls that were made and all of the total investigations that were made, and of almost 10,000 total children being removed, almost half of those children were birth to 5. 4,093 kids in 2011 were investigated for child abuse and neglect, and it was so severe that they were removed from their biological parents, placed in a relative or foster placement. That is the population I'm working with. Can we do slide number 2? Just advance?
Yeah.
Which one? Like I said, I normally don't do this. Right there. Okay. This is pulled directly from their report. Children under the age of 3 continue to be the most vulnerable to serious injury and or death by abuse. I don't think that's any surprise. If you're a 12-year-old or if you're a 13-year-old and somebody's coming after you, you can run away, you can hide, you can make a phone call, you can call for help. But what does a 3-year-old do? What does a 5-year-old do? Not much. They're pretty much at the hands of the mercy of their abuser. The thing that is striking about this slide, and I am by no means denouncing the state or the system that we live in, their bar is injury and or death by abuse. If I were in charge, I would replace that slide and say that 3 to 5-year-olds are most vulnerable for the effects of abuse or neglect being very negative on their development. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about Child Haven and what we do. Injury and death is horrible. It is horrible. There are fatality reviews that occur. I didn't bring the numbers on how many children died within the care of the foster care system or under the care of child CPS. But the effects of abuse and neglect are really what we talk about when we talk about taking apart a society. And that's where we come in at Child Haven. What I have prepared is a quick little video about our services, and then I'll get back into talking about what I'm doing with the kids. I'll talk a little bit about what I'm doing with the kids while they're figuring that out. Of that number, that was close to 4,000 kids who are being removed from homes, I am the only program in King County, Child Haven is the only program in King County that has developed a system for working with abused and neglected kids. We've been doing it since 1973. When we talk about a number of 4,000 statewide, in King County, I only have slots for 300 kids a day. There's only one other program, and that program is located in Yakima, and they have space for 40 kids. So in the state of Washington, 340 kids of the most severely abused and neglected of the entire population of the state, we're not even covering 10% of treatment for those kids. That's not to say that the state isn't outlining other services for kids. Typically, if other services are outlined for kids, they're mix and match. Families go here, families go there. Our service provides everything under one roof. The kids come to us on a daily basis. We see them Monday through Friday. We're not residential. A lot of people say to the kids, live with you. They don't live with us. If they're maintaining care by their parents, they are living with their parents, or they may be placed in a foster home, or they may be placed with a relative care provider. We provide all the transportation, and we're going out and picking up the kids and bringing them to us. The basics of what I do, we are a licensed child care facility. That's what we're licensed under. But we also carry a license for mental health services. So we're combining both early education and early mental health services to the clients that we serve. Our client is primarily the child. So all of our children are birth to 5. Children start with us at 1 month of age. My branch has 18 infants on site. The majority of our infants are coming to us because of drug and alcohol issues. Almost all of them are being detoxed at birth. Is the video ready? Okay, I'll show the video and then I'll continue.
Too familiar with CPS, the police, and courtrooms.
That one's not going.
By the age of 4, I was empty.
This is the most updated room, actually, but it's so new that the controls are kind of throwing us off.
Instability, addiction, neglect. I felt them all. Too familiar with CPS and police and courtrooms. By the age of 4, I was empty, angry, scared. Then one morning, it happened. Something different. Something that felt a lot like hope. When they took my hand, it was gentle. It felt safe. It was beautiful. Something like love. And I had a place there. From the outside looking in, it might have seemed like any other preschool or daycare, but Child Haven was far more than that to me. They understood that I was hurting. They were patient with me. And they gave me exactly what I needed to work through everything I was feeling. No matter how much I acted up, they never kicked me out or gave up. Child Haven saw potential in me that no one had ever acknowledged. And I began to see it too. I guess you could call it therapy, but to me, it just felt a lot like fun. Child Haven was the one stabilizing and positive influence in my life. I made friends. I had 3 full meals. People smiled at me. We made music and beautiful works of art. They took me to the zoo. We played at parks. I learned to ride a bike. My teachers remembered my birthday. For the first time, I started to trust. Trust that I was safe. Trust that adults would be there for me. I began to believe that there was more for me. There are so many things about Child Haven that I couldn't have understood when I was young. Child Haven is a registered mental health facility with highly educated staff that knew how to help me. When I drew my family at art time, my case manager was carefully looking for clues into what was happening with my parents. During my playtime, they taught me appropriate behaviors. When my teachers picked me up and dropped me off each day, they were checking up on my home. But I didn't see any of that, as I'm sure they intended. And I was given the opportunity to simply be a kid. In many ways, Child Haven was my family. They showed me that I was worth fighting for, that I mattered. I have worth. I am brave and strong. And when I need help, I know where to find it. Though no one knows the outcome of paths not taken, I know I'm on a good one. I am who I am today because of Child Haven.
Thank you. So who was that little girl? And who do we serve? In King County, like I said, we have the 3 branches serving birth to 5. That little girl and all the children we serve have a lot of commonalities. Poverty is the number one. All of our clients are well below the federal poverty line. 80% of our clients are coming from families where drug and alcohol is involved. 80% are coming from families where domestic violence is involved. 95% of our families are not intact. Fathers are incarcerated, not known, or there's restraining orders against them. Homelessness is a huge issue for our population. Chaos and poverty go together in terms of our population. The level or the amount of parents that are struggling with mental health issues is almost 100% for us. And in that 100%, less than half of the parents are seeking services for that. We're typically the first program that's coming in to serve the families, although if they've had an investigation, they may have been referred to primary care doc, or they may have been referred to some mental health services. Whether they followed through with that, I don't know. Typically when a child comes to us, it's a court order. So the state is outlining that the children have to attend Child Haven. If we think about stress and where we're coming from, a little stress is good. A little stress prepared me months ago to put together a slideshow, which I've never done. It's not the most amazing one in the world, but I did it. A little stress got me here, even though parking was really difficult. The other T-wing only goes up 6 floors. I knew I had to go to the 7th. I found my way here, and I left early today. It took me an hour to actually get to where I'm at right now. So stress is beneficial. But when you're growing up where everything is stressful, every moment of every day, there's an impact. The really sad thing that we see, and I do this every day, we have 96 kids. It equates to about 70 families that we're working with. We don't separate the parent and child. At this level, if there is court structure, because of the age of the children, all the parents are going to be ordered to do multiple services. If the parents do engage in those services, there's going to be a time span of 18 months where they're going to be going to court appointments, they're going to be checking in with a judge, they're going to be tracking progress, and if the parents have gone to the services, they will most likely get their kid back. And Washington State really wants to put kids back with their parents, especially very young kids. I do not measure the ability of the parents or how well they're parenting or what style they're utilizing in their parenting. My role is to really engage the parents in improving their relationship with their children, improving their parenting strategies, and lessening the risk factors in their homes. If they do engage with me and they go before a judge, the judge does not ask me, what grade did you give the parent? Every defense attorney would throw me out of the courtroom. We all know that. So what I am charged in doing is just assisting the parent, if they choose to engage with me, in bettering their life with their child. It is up to the judge in Washington State if the child is going back or not. And the majority of our young kids do go back. And my population is that 4,000 that are removed from home because it was so bad to begin with. Okay? But all parents are afforded the right to turn it around, and that's really where we come in. The heartbreaking part, and I work with a lot of parents, none of them want to do what they're doing. I have not sat across from a parent in 27 years who said, I wanted to abuse my child. That's why I woke up today. All of our parents, and I've never done an interview with a parent who wasn't abused or neglected themselves. This is an intergenerational thing that keeps cycling itself, and that's what we're here as Child Haven to do, is to break that cycle. And it might start with the kid, or it might start with the parent, but we're going to take a shot at both. Our client is the child, but we always include the parent because it's a package deal. And the child most likely will be going back to the parent. That is kind of the dual mode of what we travel in when we're doing our work. And more than likely, when I do an interview with a parent and I hear that they were sexually assaulted as a child and starting with marijuana and then turning into heroin at 19 and dropping out of school and running away and being consistently abused in the foster care system, our parents did not receive any services. And they are now reparenting in the framework that they know. And that is sad. We're all here, this is an educational institution. You are learning about dentistry. We're learning about math. We're learning about anatomy. Who took a parenting class ever? Nobody. Your parenting is handed to you by your parents and your kin. And if you grow up in a world of abuse and neglect, what do you know? You only know abuse and neglect. That's all you know. A lot of people, I think, in the general population say, well, no, they should know better. They don't know better. That is what is hardwired into their brain. 2 and 2 is 5 to them. And it will always be 5 until somebody steps in and says, 2 and 2 is 4, but so is 1 and 3, and so is 0 and 4. There's many ways to get to 4, but 2 and 2 is not 5. And that's the struggle that we have with our parents. I do not meet with many young parents. And a lot of times when we do have teen parents, it is extremely hard to work with them because they're in the middle of the rage. They're in the middle of the abuse that's occurring. They're in the middle of the addiction that's occurring. When we have older parents, and a typical age for a Child Haven parent is about 32 years old, the hardship that we have with the older parents is that they've been living this lifestyle for 32 years. And all of a sudden I'm stepping in and I'm saying, let's do something different. And what is their response to me? What the hell do you know? That's usually their response. Or, when are you going to call the cops? So what we're really trying to do, and I mentioned the word kind of executive functioning, Our parents have zero executive functioning. And that's not fair to say. They have 100% executive functioning for survival. They know what to get, how to get it, when to get it, where to get it. They're masters of that, and that's usually regarding their drug addiction. Like I said, we're dealing in a population where over 80% of our parents are drug addicted. And it's not pot and it's not alcohol. It's cocaine, it's heroin, it's meth, hardcore drugs, and they're usually using more than one. And this is the world that the child is born into. The other thing that we're looking at is changing relationships. And that starts with the child, and that does start with the parent too. We have to hook the parent. We have to bring them in. We have to make them feel comfortable. We have to assist in helping them trust us so that we can start working with their child. And then their child sees that and then starts trusting us too. We do that in two separate ways. The classroom setting really does help the child settle in and develop trust with the teaching core and the therapists that are working with them. But then we also have the therapists working with the parents. And we're really not going to change anything if we don't secure kind of the parent and the way they're looking at the world. So many of our parents come in and they're really angry at the world and they're really angry at their kids. And the problem is they don't know what is developmentally appropriate for children. They see a baby that's crying and why is that baby crying? They're keeping me up at night, rather than, why is that baby crying? Maybe the diaper's wet, I should change it. Maybe they're hungry, I should feed them. And that's not to say that our parents don't have basic skills. They do have basic skills. But what it takes to raise a child is a foreign language to them. And that's where we're coming in. And I would assume that many of you have seen probably some of our clients in clinic here. And you've seen the frustrated parents. I was in a doctor's office once with a parent. It got so chaotic and so overwhelming, and this was a parent who suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. The doctor came to give a shot to the child, and the mom ran out of the room. And I'm left with the doctor and a syringe, and he's like, I got to do this. And he's like, can you hold the child? And I'm like, they're not mine, but I will. Our parents have limited executive functioning. And our children are also developing limited executive functioning. Kind of ran the demographics a little bit. Poverty is the number one main issue that the families are all dealing in, but the children are present for the domestic violence. And typically that is why Child Protective Services is stepping in. Somebody heard a fight, they called the police came out. Could you imagine being a child and witnessing a 45-minute fight, and then the police come, they break everybody up, and then somebody gets hauled away? Research, and this is research that's been repeated over and over. Children who witness domestic violence have the same physiological outcomes as the person who is being battered. If you are watching your mom or your dad being battered, you have the same physiological responses as the person being hurt has had. The difference is the other person can run away, you can't. You are stuck watching it, and there's nothing you can do about it. And we see a lot of kids end up in our facility completely helpless or completely wanting to take me on. And that is the scariest child that I deal with, is when the 3-year-old boy comes in or the 5-year-old boy comes in and he looks at me and he puts up his dukes and he says, let's go. And it happens regularly. A child who does not fear a full-size grown man is a pretty scary child. Am I afraid of a 5-year-old? No, not physically, but emotionally, that is a scary kid, and without services, what do we have on our hands? That's what I worry about. So, which is the arrow key? The 3 branches. Talked about, we cannot separate the parent and child. We work with both of them. This is really what I want to focus on a little bit. This is a PET scan on, you're all backwards from me, so on your left, we have a normal brain. On your right, you have the brain of an abused and neglected child. The circled areas are the temporal lobes. What are the temporal lobes in charge of? They're in charge of our emotions. They're in charge of our responses to stimulation. When we think about a developing brain, we all started as a brainstem, right? And it directed our basic needs of hunger, of elimination, of care, and that's really where children are functioning from. and then everything else gets built upon that. This is the really important piece to stress, is that if children are exposed to high levels of abuse and neglect, the difference in the two slides, the temporal lobe is being eaten away. That is consistent stress just eating away at this child's brain. And this child's ability to cope and manage their emotions is limited. This child's ability to be in a group setting becomes limited. This child's ability to learn and focus in the future becomes limited. The number one thing in kindergarten is sit, listen, and repeat. That's the basics of kindergarten. When our kids go into kindergarten, they can't do it. They're distracted, they're all over the place. The teachers say, "Oh my, you're a problem." Where does that kid end up? Principal's office. And from there, they go home. And where are they going home to? A home of abuse and neglect. It's a vicious cycle. And that's why we're involved as Child Haven. I have kids that we work with, and they get sent into the kindergarten, and the kindergarten does the usual routine of kicking them out, and we show up on the doorstep and we say, that's not what we're going to do. I have a no kick-out policy in my child care. Kids hit and bite, kick and spit in all child cares. We probably have a more higher level of very ingenious use of swear words. The combinations are wonderful. I learn more things. It's like truck driver city. The kids just let them fly. I don't think that we have a higher rate of actual physical violence, but we do see that the strategies that kids use, they typically hold on to a little longer. So if they're biting, they're going to bite a little longer. If they're hitting, they're going to hit a little longer. And that's not to say, in every classroom there probably is a child that probably would fall out of the normal range of aggression, what we would consider a normal range of aggression. But that is because of the temporal lobe being damaged and this child not being able to manage themselves in a classroom setting caused by the abuse and neglect that they are facing on a daily basis. That's why we're involved. How do we do it? It's not rocket science. A lot of people want to hear that we have the magic pill, or that we do something so extraordinary that nobody could replicate. The founder of Child Haven is Pat Gogarty. There's a video of him many years ago saying what Child Haven does is what occurs in normally developing households on a daily basis. We pay attention to the kids, we meet their needs, we follow through, we're consistent, we're safe, we provide them an environment to flourish in. Now that sounds kind of hokey and kind of simple, but our children are not growing up in normally developing homes. They're growing up in chaos, they're growing up in drug and alcohol, they're growing up with domestic violence, and it's really rough on them. Most of the children coming to us, this is the first child care setting that they'll be in. I mean, obviously, if it's an infant. The older the child gets upon enrollment, the tougher it gets for us. 3-year-olds who have been living in chaos for a very long time really do have a difficult time with self-regulation. Child care is about regulating yourself, or the ability of the adults around you to learn how to regulate yourself. And this is also an important point. I wasn't going to get into the dentistry and having whoever's into working with kids here, pediatric dentistry. Are kids stressed out when they come to have their teeth cleaned? They probably are. But here's the deal. Normal kids' stress level, maybe here. Protective factors from parents bring them down a little bit. Then it might rise a little bit, fluctuates up and down. But there's protective factors, and the mom might come and hold the child while you're doing something, or they may have prepared the child by reading books about going to the dentist. That's what we did with our daughters. And we selected a great dentist who really took time. The Child Haven kids, they're lucky if their parent takes them to the dentist, let alone goes into the space with them. The amount of abuse and stress that they're on a daily basis, the normal kid is way down here, they're always up here. This is what I'm really afraid of, and we all need to be really afraid of, is that the children who are exposed to stress on a continuous basis day after day, they are altering, the stress is altering their entire physiology, and it's putting them up here. We have kids with resting heart rates at 120. Everybody else is just kind of cruising along and feeling good, and these kids are scanning everything. Where's it coming from? What's going to happen? What's going on? Try reading at a circle time to 10 kids where 4 of them are like that. It's just about impossible if you don't know what you're doing. That's where we come in. We're safe, we're consistent, we bring things down. We understand these kids really well. I have about 25 boys who are over the age of 3 in the program. 19 of them have already been kicked out of childcare. Why are they kicked out of childcare? They're kicked out of childcare because of their behavior. What's causing their behavior? Their emotions. Why are their emotions an issue? Because they're not processing their emotions. It's broken. It's damaged. It's not because these kids are bad and we should just kick them out. It's because they have an overloaded system, and if we don't do something, as in all of us, and especially Child Haven, if we don't help turn that around, this doesn't repair itself. This continues to deteriorate, and the kids continue to get older, and they continue to not recognize situations and act in safe ways, and they're impulsive. It's scary. I don't know how many studies have actually been done in a prison system to look at sort of where people who are incarcerated are coming from. I would bet that their ACE score is over 7. An ACE score, the adverse childhood experience, is based on 10. It's a series of pretty hard questions. Have you ever been exposed to sexual abuse, physical abuse? Did your parents fight? You know, the pretty hard-hitting questions. The more you answer yes, the higher your ACE score goes. The findings from the ACE study show a massive correlation. The higher your score goes, the more physical issues you have in adulthood and the more emotional issues you have in adulthood. No surprise. But it's a groundbreaking study, and it's one that we're pulling in, and we do an informal ACE score on our kids. Every one of our kids is a minimum 5, and it only goes up to 10. We're talking birth to 5-year-olds, and they're already halfway up the ACE score. I think a score of 3 puts you at high risk for coronary disease, for diabetes, a couple of other things that'll kill you pretty quickly in your later life. So these are the things that we're dealing with on a daily basis. The thing that we look at within our classroom settings, and again, it's not that we have something really special that we all can't do. It's about meeting the kids where they're at and attending to the needs that they have. We have circle times and we talk about gun safety to 4-year-olds because guns are in their homes. We're not going to not talk about it. We also have circle times where we read books and we talk about nursery rhymes. We have to normalize life for them. They're still children, and if you all kind of came on a tour with me, the one thing that I love hearing on a tour is, this just looks like a childcare. Todd, tell me what you do. And then we go into, these are where the kids are coming from, this is who we are, this is what we do, and then people really start seeing the unfolding of what's occurring before their eyes, that by a very structured and safe atmosphere, you can really start changing kids. Bruce Perry, who is one of the leading researchers on childhood trauma, he's a medical doctor, he's a neuroscientist. I don't think the guy sleeps at all, he just writes a lot of papers and studies things, massive brain surgeon. He is quoted, and I totally believe this, as saying that if we intervene before age 5, we have a good chance of fixing this. But after age 5, all bets are off. Because your brain doesn't grow much more. The capacity of your brain, the size of your brain, is set at about 5 or 6. Now you will learn and you will have experiences and you will connect all the dots and you will get smarter, but the actual capacity of your brain will not grow. Bruce has a series of scans similar to this that are showing normal developing brain sizes, which are within the average range, and then children exposed to abuse and neglect. And there's just brain atrophy. The brains are much smaller in abused and neglected children, and that will not grow back. The other thing that's occurring is well, just like the slide is showing there, death of brain cells. And brain cells do not come back. You can break an arm, and an arm will heal. A lot of people focus on kind of abuse and neglect, and we do see a lot of abuse and neglect at Child Haven. We have all the stories of the kids, we know what's going on, but it's the neglect that is the real challenging part of what we do, and it's the real silent killer of kids. The neglect is what is stopping the brain from developing and growing and connecting and putting one in one and creating, you know, a learning series for kids. So not only are we kind of approaching things from a mental health side with working with the parents, we have multiple parenting interventions that we'll do with parents. We welcome them to come into the building. We're modeling for them more appropriate parenting interventions. We always want to kind of tuck the parent under our wing because we need to help them increase their relationship with their child, and then the child, through their eyes, needs to see us connecting with their parent. It's very common that our parents have burned out every provider they have. It's very common that our parents have been kicked out of multiple programs for their attitudes. I don't accept negative attitude, but I say, I see you're really upset. We'll continue this conversation later. Most times the parent will come back to me and say, that was a pretty rich experience because you didn't call security on me and they didn't haul me out here. I have multiple parents who have restraining orders against buildings. They can't go into clinics, they can't go into buildings because they've just driven the clinic crazy. But they're parents and they're in charge of their kids, so we have to meet them somewhere. The part about what we do and the no kick-out policy for kids, it seems like a no-brainer, but like I said, almost 70% of my 3-year-old boys have already been kicked out of a child care. And that is, when it is the duty of the adults in the child's life to kind of bring them up and teach them right from wrong, or however you want to label that, to teach them how to negotiate the world, negotiate relationships, and we're kicking them out when they're 3 years old, it doesn't make any sense. So that's what I'm most proud of, is our no kick-out policy. The other thing that we do, and we did have a longitudinal study. It was conducted in the mid-'80s. It followed a couple of hundred Child Haven kids, and then there was a randomly selected group of kids that were just receiving basic CPS services. Followed them for 20 years, followed them through high school graduation, and some of them followed into college graduation. 3 very striking results: that the Child Haven kids were 6 times less likely to have committed a violent juvenile crime. 6 times is a pretty darn big number. Better adjusted in school and less disruptive for teachers. That is really important. Where are children going to spend the majority of their time? It's not at home, it's in classroom settings. My goal is to find out, you know, every year we graduate 20 kids into public school. I hope to be around long enough, 12 years, to find out how many of these kids have graduated. I am of age to start having college graduates now who I've served long ago. And that is really important news to us, because when you're a child whose brain is not functioning and you perceive everything as a threat and you want to get whatever from somebody as fast as you can, or if you're walking towards me and I think you're going to hit me, so I just pop you real quick. That's what our kids do every day. You're not going to last long in school. You're just not. And that's where our setting really helps kids at a very young age kind of turn that around, so that the hypervigilance may be lower in their later life. The other thing on there was 2 times less likely to abuse drugs. One of the things and one of the commitments that we have, we're working with a group called the Center for the Developing Child. It's a group of researchers connected to Harvard. There were 2 sites in Washington State that were selected, and we were one of them. One of the cool things, and I said it's pretty basic, we're kind of nice to kids, to put it in quotes. That's how we make this all work. It's much more complicated than that, because we're talking about attachment and a lot of other things that kids are experiencing. But one of the really cool interventions that we're working on is helping kids with executive functioning through game playing. Most of our parents do not know how to play with their kids. They're not playing with their kids. Their kids are watching TV. Not a lot of learning going on when kids are just watching TV. So we are working with Harvard and studying, starting with 4-year-olds, taking very simple games. It's you roll a dice, it comes up a color, you pick a card, and you do what the card says. It's called roll and play. We start with that game, we do 10 weeks of it. And then we step up to another game, and then we step up to another game, and then we step up to another game. Each game is successively more difficult, there's more parts to follow, there's more attention that needs to occur. We are seeing significant results in children that are playing the games through the series, and we've been following a group of kids for 2 years now, in an increase in their ability to sit still, to attain attention, to have better relationships with their peers in the room. A lot of times when we start playing these games with 4-year-olds and roll and play, I want the dice. No, I want the dice. And then you have 2 kids just on top of each other, and you're like, this is supposed to be helpful. But over time, then you start seeing them passing the dice back and forth and taking turns and doing things that kids normally do. Kids that are developing in a normal situation with parents who are guiding them through that. We saw pretty striking results 2 years ago for the kids that we had initially started with. We thought, what would happen if we played games with the parents? And that hadn't been done yet. So we selected some of our parents and we started playing games with them. A, they really liked it, even the very simple games. B, we found out that hardly any of them had ever played games with anybody, and nobody had played with them as kids. And we started seeing them be calmer on self-reports. The parents that were engaged in this, they did about a 16-week long session with us. We went through 3 games. We also included the game playing with their child. We more or less did it because we wanted to see the time that the parent and the child spent together increase. And we were more surprised that the parents started reporting themselves as being calmer and more in control of their life situations. So we're continuing that. We're really looking at that. That's kind of what we do. Do it every day, 5 days a week. I know that you guys are going to be leaving soon, so if there are any questions, I'll entertain questions.
When they act out, how do you guys deal with them?
We base everything. There's a reason for the acting out. Now, in most settings, you'll see you don't act like that. What I would love a 3-year-old to do is put their hands on their hips and say, when I'm angry, how should I be acting? But they don't do that, right? We look at every acting out behavior as a response to some kind of trigger. And it's usually an emotional trigger. The child got hit, they're angry, they want to hit back. The child's not getting what they want, they're disappointed, they want to just take it. So we back it up. And it's more about coming to the child and surrounding them with ourselves and saying, I see you really had a feeling. Let's figure out what it was about. Rather than, you hit somebody and you need to sit here and think about it before you come back to the group. There is no benefit in separating a child from a group and telling them to think about it. 3-year-olds do not have cognitive capacity to think why they hit somebody. They're only responding to what they want and what they want to get. So that's the start of it. And that's what we work with parents on. Your kids are not out to get you. They're out to communicate with you, and we want you to figure out what that communication is.
Do you have any partnerships with medical services or general services to help these kids get access to care?
We have a nurse on site. It's a Child Haven employee. 66% of our kids on intake, birth to 5, have a primary care physician. 99% have a primary physician upon leaving. 99% have a primary dentist upon leaving. We do a quarterly vision, dental, and hearing screening, which all the kids go through. And then that information is synthesized and sent back to the family. We say, this happened today and the recommendation is you should follow up with it. If the parent doesn't follow up, we're persuasive, we help. The thing for the parents is we really want to teach them to do it themselves, but I will never let a child fall through the cracks. If the big one is for special ed services, parents will not go to the appointments. We give them a chance to go to the first one, most of them don't. So then I jump in my van and I drive out to their house the morning of the next appointment. I say, I'm here, let's go. And we just take them in. Do not want a kid missing appointments. And we really, the goal is to really promote the self-reliance in the parent. A lot of people sometimes ask, like, well, what's the magic number? How long do you have to be involved? There was a time in the state where they only authorized kids to be with me for 9 months. What am I going to do in 9 months with a parent who has been living this lifestyle for 30 years, a kid who has been in this lifestyle for 3 years, and a family system that's been in this for decades? There's nothing I can do in 9 months. I can keep the kids safe because I'm bringing them in every day. Anecdotally, it's about a 3-year program. Year 1, you're going to have a relapse. The parent is going to go back to their domestically violent partner, or they're going to go back to the heroin or the crack or whatever they're using. Once you demonstrate that you're able to go through the relapse with them, year 2, they're hitting a stride, they're really kind of digging in, they're trusting you. And then about year 3 is when the parents really start integrating the learning, and you can start seeing that they're demonstrating learning of the parenting interventions that we're utilizing with them. So it's really about a 3-year program. And for every child, it's about $150 a day, which is steep on the child care end, and I'm only reimbursed $70 for their care. So we have a lot of private fundraising that we do. Did I answer your question okay? Okay, and hopefully got yours. Okay. Any other?
How are you assessing the ACEs on kids who are under 5?
Parent,
Parents not by it.
well, we will, yeah, for every child there's a referent, and for every referent there's a packet of paperwork. And we get it, we read through it, and if it's a CPS case, it pretty much outlines why it's a CPS case. Was there domestic violence? Was there, was the child hit and abused? So we have all of that information. Yeah. And then for many of our infants, the debate of when does life start, for many of our infants, in utero, the day they started, they are in a womb full of meth and cocaine. So for a lot of our babies, there's one ACEs to begin with, and they're not even joining us yet, which is really difficult. And then you have the combined effect if the mom's engaging in domestic violence and all of her systems are activated. We're finding more research that baby systems are getting activated too. So we have babies born already with 2 ACEs scores. Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you.